AI just collapsed the cost and the time of setting up your own family office. Not someday, not theoretically, now. What used to take countless hours and big dollars has now been condensed for your benefit. Does that mean AI will replace lawyers and CPAs and investment bankers and advisors? No, it means the most expensive part, the labor, the heavy lifting, is done for you. In this video, I'm joined by my fellow growth thinker, Geoff Sokol, investment advisor at Growthink RIA. Together, we're going to show you how to use AI to design the blueprint of a modern family office.
Thank you, Tim. And that intro has got me all fired up. It's a genuine, exciting reaction I'm having here. Let's dig.
AI to build the modern family office. What an idea. What a concept. It is exciting times. I figured we would go through our notes. We put together 10 ideas of how to use AI to build out your modern family office. Let's run through the first point here, which is for business owners. So we're talking about setting up a family office in a condensed window using AI. So naturally, that's going to lead us to start considering prompts, because prompts is the most important component here of building out a good plan using AI. So when we're talking to business owners on the topic of, let's say, succession, exits, structuring, or even things as complicated or uncomplicated as qualified small business stock, topics like that, what kind of prompts would we start with for the business owner when building out that family office plan?
I think the best way to go is you start broad. You would say, I am in this sector. I'm thinking about exiting in the next 3 or 5 years. At a high level, what should I know? What should I be prepared for? That's a good starting point. Then you might get like 3 or 5 different points, depending which AI that you use, and they are different. We might talk about that. Then you can start to hone in. Like, tell me more about option A. Tell me more about option B. Tell me more about option C. Then it's going to start kind of feeding you what you want to hear. So in terms of the prompting, you want to push back and say, why would some people think that's a bad idea? Or tell me the opposite version of that. Or what would a contrarian thinker do? Or, like, which trade-offs am I making if I save on taxes here and then if I do that? So you start broad. I want to exit in 3 or 4 years. I have a software company with approximately a couple $1 million in earnings. What does my exit look like if I do it in 45 months? Then you start to hone in and press on it and push back too, because AI will tell you that you're a genius and will tell you exactly what you want to hear, which is good for user engagement, but bad from a planning perspective.
Yeah, I've asked my GPT to be a contrarian, to your point, and I say, argue my points. You had provided me a handful of prompts, so I just want to read a few because I think they're excellent.
Cool.
What mistakes do founders make 3 to 5 years before an exit?
Great one.
How should I sequence entity restructuring before a liquidity event? And how do control, liquidity, and taxes trade off in different exit strategies?
Those are good. Very good.
So these are high leverage prompts for the business owner. And I think from that point is what you're saying, where it's like reprompting, re-asking the question, going deeper, give me optionality. I know you work with the AI tools quite a bit, as I do. And you had just briefly mentioned there's multiple tools out there. So how can, when someone's going through this process and still trying to keep it within a condensed window, how do you approach using different tools?
The best way to think about it is there are different tools out there. And just like, if you're a soda drinker, some people like Dr. Pepper, some people like Coca-Cola. It's like, to calibrate for your specific preferences is very helpful, which is a point we emphasize. And then, like, we both agree that you do want to push back. So you could take a prompt from ChatGPT and then put it into Claude and just sort of compare and contrast what you get in response, and then go over to Gemini and then try Grok. And you could give the same prompts and just see if they're all the same. They often are. Like, you'll have 80 or 90% overlap. I've found over time, I like ChatGPT for iterating different ideas. I like Gemini because it's connected to our Google Drive. So I can say, look at this folder where I have all of my different or every article I've written for the past 5 years. They're in Google Docs and pull out some of the best ideas from it. So it's like a research tool. Claude is very good at marketing related prompts. So I say like, I want to help me with this LinkedIn post I'm doing. So this is part of what we like to give away to people. We're saying you can do this in 30 minutes. So you're not going to learn all this in 30 minutes if you're starting from scratch. But we'll tell you, we have like a matrix to say, for these prompts, try this tool. For these other ones, use this one. There's a lot out there, and we've done a lot of the legwork for you.
Yeah, and I think this conversation is timely because for two reasons. One is there's a lot of conversations about people setting up their own family offices, and for whatever reason, it's in the zeitgeist and it's buzzy right now. And we hear it a lot of people saying, how do I do this? Or what does it mean? Or tell me more. The other part of why this is important, because of AI, it's prevalent and there's all these different tools. And I think you nailed the top ones, which would be the Grok, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT. I think if even the layman is out there and just saying, as a business owner going through succession and exit planning, and you say, we're going to start here and just start going with those prompts, I think that's a good point. I had a conversation with a business owner yesterday who, is wrestling with some family dynamics, and they think they want to exit, but there's a couple family members that may not want to. That is the kind of thing that you could take confidentially into any of these tools and say, give me some techniques to even just communicate better. Give me some prompts, give me some exercises, give me some of that. So, okay, let's move on. So that was point number one, our business owners, succession, exit structuring. Point number two, and this is where it gets really fun, is personal and household financial planning. So when it comes to this, what kind of prompts, what's the goal and objective here when building out the family office from this lens?
Well, this is a critical step, and we mentioned this just a moment ago. What do owners or founders, what do they tend to get wrong? I'm biased here because I spend a lot of time in the financial planning world, where business owners have a number. They see industry comps. If this business went for 6 or 7 times earnings, my business is way better. I'm not selling for less than 9 or 10 times earnings. And I hear that, and my immediate thought is, yeah, but what are you doing? Like, what's going on in your life? If you had 40 million versus 53 and a half, what changes? So this is helpful. I think there are introverted people who they don't want to have these conversations with other people. So there's that component where if you're iterating with a tool, it's a real blank canvas. You can be as open as you want. But it's also it's labor. Like, it's intense amount of hours that you're putting into getting all this information out there. If you do it the way we used to do it several years ago, which is go and sit down, it's almost like you're going to a therapist to get all this stuff off your chest. So you're like 3 or 4 hours in before you've even heard of an idea or even thought about, here's my net proceeds, and here's how I design a trust, and here's how I do an installment sale versus a straight liquidity, and here's a stock versus asset. So you're getting like 60 or 70% of what you need done without having to go and pour your heart out for 3 or 4 hours.
And that's an excellent point. It kind of goes back to that example I was saying about the business owner dealing with the soft side, the psychological and maybe even existential side of life and business. I really liked a handful of the prompts that you had recommended, so I want to read a few.
Let's do it.
Help me structure short, medium, and long-term goals with trade-offs. Because it's really great to say with trade-offs versus just give me the goals.
Yes, exactly.
How should financial planning, or how should planning differ with young children versus aging parents? Boom. That's the $100 million question, because of just, the aging population. What conflicts typically arise between lifestyle and long-term wealth? How do I design flexibility into a life plan? And what should I decide now that's hard to change later? These are excellent prompts.
I'm kind of pivoting away from the question because those prompts, we're handing them away for free. And I don't mean to talk myself out of a job here, because there's still a lot of importance of having a professional with some of this expertise to guide you to get that last like 10 or 20% done. But that's it right there. That is more helpful than what I could deliver to you. You're going to get answers to those questions that will allow you to understand if your immediate goal is, I want to buy this brand new, beautiful house in Malibu for $40 million and my business is worth 60. Then there you go. It means that you're exiting and it's all over, and then you got to figure it out from there. Versus this idea of selling for 50 versus 40 million is very helpful when you compare it to what you need that liquidity for in the next couple of months or couple of years versus 5 or 10 years versus 10 or 20. Because suddenly an installment sale becomes a better option if you're able to defer more of the taxes. So there's an installment, or there's the idea of let's wait, let's put the brakes on it, and let's restructure to get more tax efficiency. Well,
Well,
cash flow,
that's where you come in. That's where the human comes in.
yes, that's where the human comes in, but they'll give you a high level version of saying, if you consider this, it may make more sense for you based on what you're achieving or trying to achieve in your personal life.
Right.
If you get that far, it's it's like you have that light bulb moment that's going to save a ton of time and effort in going back to that idea of writing it all down and mapping it out and having 5 hours of conversation. You're going to come to the professional service providers with a much better idea of what you're trying to do. And then when you work with the banking side of it, you're less focused on selling for 42 versus 47. And you're like, I know if we get to this number and we structure it this way, I'm going to have my dream life, which,
Right.
you're going into it like a total sigh of relief. It's not like everything hinges on this one thing. And if the wire doesn't hit, your life's in chaos. You know exactly what you need, not just for tomorrow, but for 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Yeah, that's a great point. That dovetails into the third point, which is tax planning and asset allocation. So, yes, we need to figure out the household income, which is point two, and kind of financial planning. But you could say this is number one, which is tax planning. It's always on everybody's mind, especially as you make more money and you get older. And how do I keep more in my pocket and less in Uncle Sam's?
Hmm.
What prompts would you recommend here? Maybe two or three that you feel this is going to help someone, when they're going deeper into their plan and helping them kind of see a broader 360 view. Like, what are some of the prompts?
I think what you want to do here is understand the level of complexity that you're signing up for,
Mm,
because it's an unfortunate thing about taxes. It's not like ordering coffee at Starbucks. If you're going to have a 0% effective tax rate, you might be talking about moving or reorganizing your entity in a different tax location. Um, or it could be I can roll over my capital gains into an opportunity zone, but I may not see any cash flow for several years. That liquidity is locked up for 10 years. If it doesn't
right.
work out, I'm out of luck. So you want to figure out the low-hanging fruit. I think that's what I would do first is prompt this in. I want to save on taxes. I don't want to do anything crazy. I don't want to lock up my liquidity. It's unrealistic that I'm going to move. What can I do right now and have it done by tomorrow morning? And then it'll spit out like, okay, you could do this and this and this.
That's good. I like the immediacy on it and putting windows on it. So what can I do within this time frame?
Yes. And maybe tomorrow morning is
Yeah, well, who
ambitious,
knows?
but
Let's see what see what the genie in the bottle says.
right.
Um, you had a prompt which was, what is one of the risks for over optimizing for taxes?
Yes,
Tell me
exactly.
about that. Let's
It's a funny
expand.
thing. We're in California where like a classic California conundrum is we complain about taxes, and
Hmm.
I'll tell you what, I'm still gonna live here next year and the year after. So, and then there's I don't want to get into the politics, but there's like this exodus out of New York City and Wall Street's moving to Florida. And you do see that incrementally. So I would say like this is a good example. Over optimizing for tax. Let's say I can get over to Texas. At least I can move some of my assets over there, or I can put some stuff into a certain investment account versus my taxable one or whatever it is. Let's say I end up optimizing by like 3 or 5 cents on the dollar, but it means I'm away from my friends and family and I have to navigate some complexity. And
Very good point.
it's like I feel like this is kind of cliche, but I'm a father now. I've developed some emotional intelligence. There is a real point to having this math versus meaning
Hmm.
conversation Like, do 3 or 5 cents on the dollar mean more to you than like seeing your kid's little league baseball game? It's like you
Okay,
should
so
be able to have a quick answer to that.
that's math over meaning. Wow, that's a podcast in itself. What would you see as a prompt for math over meaning?
I think there's a time when math over meaning comes into the equation, and this goes back to prompting. So we're starting high level, then we're getting into entity structuring and tax, installment sales, charitable remainder trusts, understanding like stock and asset sales, and then we get to a point where we're starting to understand here are my gross and net proceeds. Here's when I'm going to receive them. Here's how I can tie them back to my vision and values and personal liquidity
Yeah.
needs. Now I want to think about what blind spots have I potentially missed that are going to distract me from achieving some of my lifestyle goals? Where you might have to press into that a little bit because it's a bit of a
Yeah.
loaded prompt.
Well,
But
that's a reasonable prompt, though.
yes.
Blind spots.
Hmm.
I think blind spots is good. Yeah, because they're blind. So what it's going to bring things up, and you're just like, ooh, that feel a little friction. I don't know if I want to answer that.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. So I'd
Yeah.
say that's kind of like your ace up the sleeve
Hmm.
is every time you're getting close to being like, okay, they just designed something that I really like, you'll have a tendency, I've had to correct myself from doing this a lot of times, where I'm like, this is awesome, let's do that, elaborate on that, build into a plan, save, done.
Hmm.
What you want to do is just when that moment happens, and you'll know it, you'll feel it,
Yeah.
just say, talk me through why this is a bad idea. Like, use my voice, like everything you know
There you
about
go.
me, and talk to me and tell me why I'm making a mistake. And then
That's
they
good.
might give you a really compelling rationale as to why it's a bad idea. Or you might hear those points and be like, yeah, I see it, I hear it, I get it, but no, this is the one. So it's like math versus meaning, or however you want to get this point
Hmm.
across. It's just
Yeah.
like being a contrarian when you feel like you've gotten to the right answer. It's like kind of like the scientific method. Let's make sure we're 1,000,000% sure, not
Yeah.
just 99%.
Well, and when it comes to being 1,000,000% sure, the next point, number four here, is estate planning and trust design. So, in an area where you definitely want to be sure, it's in your estate plan. How are we using AI to help us move faster and think smarter? And what are some of the key prompts here on the estate planning?
Well, on this one, we could say this with all of it, but really here, the number one thing that I hear with this, and this is very true, I'm not just making this up for our audience, is I'll talk about this stuff and everyone will say, I need to do that. And I'm like, when do you want to do
Yeah,
it? They're like, oh, I didn't mean that we're going to. I just mean that I need to. So the point with
that's
AI
very good.
here is like we're getting closer to doing the things that we have been putting off. I
Hmm.
think that's true of all of us. Understand that if this is something you were going to kick the can on doing for another several years, just the fact that you're thinking about it, if you even spend a few minutes at a time every other week, you're getting much closer.
Yeah.
Whereas all the time in the news, we just saw one with the Bus family, that's Jeannie Buss and the Lakers, with
Hmm.
weird estate designs of if this person outlives this person, then the basketball team will be sold instead of handed down. And then you get into these weird gray areas. I know we're not all talking about inheriting the Lakers, and it's hard to feel bad for these people when they've got that amount of money. But the point is, these things they just don't get talked about. And then the morbid thing that happens far more often than people want to think about is they're at the funeral and then instead of grieving, someone's like, by the way, mom said that she was going to give me the jewelry. And then it's like you don't even have a moment to breathe before you're sitting with the lawyers.
Hmm.
So there is two things here, or two categories, I guess you could say. One is actually what is going to happen to the assets and how to access it and how is it designed. So let's call that the math again. And then there is sort of like the emotionally intelligent side of it, where just the ability to understand how these things work puts you in a position to have these conversations, which otherwise family members aren't having them.
Hmm.
And then it's a mystery how it's going to be handled. There's going to be bitterness and resentment, and a few years go by before you talk to a brother or sister or someone who used to be a close friend, and It's like, is it really worth it versus
Right.
just to try and take a proactive approach and have a difficult conversation? So I
So
think AI is helpful just to like do these things that you're not otherwise going to do.
there's a technical side, the math
Hmm.
side, which is what's the best structure. Just technically help me set up the estate plan and see what that looks like. Then there's this emotional side. Again, I would argue that's why we need other humans because
Yes.
of this emotional EQ that AI doesn't have. And then you can help someone bridge these conversations, these difficult conversations, or really just kind of hold them to account to have them sooner than later. Let's move to number five. Number five is insurance consulting and risk management.
Well, this is a good one. When you start thinking about an exit, the the normal thought process is like cash flow, balance sheet, run rate,
Hmm.
competitive advantages, unique value proposition. So you're imagining what makes your business valuable, and you often won't even think about what risks could wipe it all out.
Yeah.
So those things could all be true, like the unique value proposition, and I have 51% or more market share, and on paper it's fantastic business. So you want to explain these things and then say, how would this get wiped out, or what sort of liabilities, or what sort of vulnerabilities, or what's my exposure to you know the government debt, or something that seems counterintuitive to say, what would I need to pay to ensure that my worst case scenario, let's say this is worth 50 million, I want my absolute worst case scenario to be that I walk away with 20,
Hmm.
because that's still, a
Yeah.
lot of money versus the delta of going from 50 to 0. So insurance consulting is, which policies do I need, broadly speaking, and then
Hmm.
if I'm in this industry thinking about an exit with this type of entity to this type of buyer within this window of time, and here's what our capital stack looks like, and here's what our cap table looks like, then you'll get much more specific ideas, and then we can start reprompting and reiterating from there.
Yeah. I also like just simple questions and prompts about premiums. What
Hmm.
is market rate and how do these premiums change over time? And what would these different types of policies look like? And if I were to stack them, what's the cost benefit of having a premium versus something else? Um, I think this is one of those kind of gray areas that it's hard to know everything there is to know about insurance. And, so
Totally.
I find myself going to these AI tools and just asking a lot of questions, which is treat me like I know nothing and speak to me in
Hmm.
very simple terms.
Exactly. Yeah. I have I have a picture from Margin Call. If you remember the scene where he
Yeah,
says the president comes in and says, "Speak to me as though you might speak to a 5-year-old or a golden retriever."
yeah,
But
exactly.
yes, that
The
you want to
golden
do
retriever.
that. Yeah. And then don't forget to tie it back into your business, because in some cases the business can pay for these premiums and then you're getting tax savings.
Mm,
So remember to relate it all back. So have that simple conversation. What policies are there? How to tie them together? There's a term called a rider, or a
mm,
conversion privilege that you can attach to a policy. So, for example, if I need a term policy and also long-term care, you'd think intuitively, okay, those are two policies. But actually, you can design a term that, say, like within 7 years of the 30-year term, I can convert it to where the premiums that I was paying for this policy get flipped over into a long-term care.
mm.
So I won't get into all the technicalities there, but think about how to use your tax arbitrage opportunities from affording the premiums and getting the tax savings, and then don't buy 10 policies when you could buy like three or four that you can stack on top of each other. So that's like, start simple and then kind of press into it and get more detailed there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, well, let's go to number six, which is, I guess this is more of the meaning. Most certainly, it has some math because of the tax saving implications here. But legacy, charity, donor advised funds,
Hmm.
what are they? Why do we need them? And how is that part of an effective family office?
Here is your opportunity to save on taxes while doing things that you care about and make a positive impact in your community or in the world. So most people, they kind of get in the spot where they want to reduce their tax bill, and this is like, it's the end of December, they're about to close the year, and they're just like, yeah, what's a good charity? Here's 10,000 bucks, which is fine. I'm sure that money gets used for good purposes. But if you can take control here, then you're going to be able to align your tax savings with doing things for maximum benefit in terms of timing, and then make an impact that you really do care about. So to try and tie these things all together is logical. It's going to save taxes, and it's going to be something you feel good about, which also means, we don't talk about this enough. When you're a serial entrepreneur and you start thinking about taking your foot off the gas, there is a lot of people that say like, I always thought work-life balance was a good thing, but I'm miserable. Like what am I doing now? So you want to start thinking about when we say legacy, like it's like almost synonymous with giving. But when
Hmm.
I think about legacy, it's like you made all this money, you introduced all these products and services to the world, you did fantastically well, but what's next? Like what else are you excited about? To tie that in with tax savings and having like operational control of how that money is spent to make an impact and to save on taxes, it's like let's just remember to make sure it all ties together.
Yeah, yeah. You handed us over a few prompts. I'm not going to read them all, but there's two here that I liked.
Okay.
When should I give appreciated assets versus cash?
Hmm.
So the timing of your charitable donations, I think is an important one. And then how do I design a giving strategy aligned with my values and taxes? Because most time you don't really see values and taxes kind of put next together. I thought those were very interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, that's always going to tie your plan back to what it is that you want to achieve on a much deeper level. So what we tend to see is it's the end of the year. If I give 20,000 bucks away, I save 8,000 on taxes. Okay, let's just do that. Let's press one button, done. And then like you never think about it again.
Yeah.
When it's, you did something wonderful. Let's make sure it's done as efficiently as possible and that you're still involved where you can actually see what happens as a result of that gift.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like that warm and fuzzy feeling. Let's not miss it.
Absolutely. Makes the world go round. So that leads us to number seven, which I think is a natural transition, which
Hmm.
goes into work life balance, health, and wealth. You're kind of mentioning some of this long term care. Uh, with the aging baby boomer population, this is a big topic, which is, they're living longer, they're healthier and wealthier than previously, and they're investing a lot into just wellness in general. And I think wellness is more of a topic than it probably had ever been. Most certainly when I was growing up, most people didn't
Hmm.
talk wellness. We were drinking Coca-Cola and eating McDonald's. That's how we grew up. But now it's like, that's a faux pas. So work-life balance, health, wealth, putting this through the lens of the family office. So the prompts then would be what?
Well, we have the classics of trade-offs is a word that we hear over and over again. What
Mm-hmm.
trade-offs am I making between my health and my wealth that I might be missing? That's kind of like a blind spot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like this prompt. I didn't write this one down, but it just came to mind. Is how help me think about health as an asset class, or
Mm.
help me integrate health
Right.
into my portfolio.
Yeah.
Because this is another math versus meaning thing, or a math versus quality of life thing. Um, if you can view health as something you put money into and you have a positive ROI,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes easier to think about optimization. Then, once you have a sense of how to do that, let's figure out now how to optimize it. We have a family office. Like if there are certain perks that you're giving to your quote unquote staff, like I'm a staff member, my son, my daughter, they're staff members, they do some work for the family. Let's give them health benefits like gym memberships or concierge health services or things to do with mental health or physical health or like hiring a chef, for example, where these are now qualified business expenses that the business is paying for it, and then you'll see that in terms of your tax savings.
Yeah.
So let's think about health as an asset class that maybe is like 5 or 7% of my portfolio, and then let's figure out how to pay for these things to increase my quality of life while getting tax savings for my household personally. That ties it all together.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. One of your prompts was, what regrets do wealthy people report later in life?
Yeah, and I'm not smart enough to convey all of it, and that's what AI is for. They'll give you, a whole lot of examples where people had it all on paper,
Mm-hmm.
but there was more than meets the eye. You don't
Yeah.
want to fall into that trap, which is easy to do. So let's get it all out there and figure out how to deal with
Yeah.
it.
Well, we've all seen the stories and kind of heard the horror stories. So I think that's an important prompt. Okay, so that takes us to number 8, which is liquidity planning. Uh,
Hmm.
avoiding forced sales, stress testing liquidity events, cash architecture, even maybe just the mental health of filling liquid. So how do we factor that into our family office?
Well, there's a classic example with I forget off the top of my head if it was the Dolphins or it might have been the Jets. It was a football team where someone had worked their whole life. It's one of these, pulled himself up by his bootstraps type of thing.
Hmm.
They acquired an NFL team. This was before they're worth like, multi-billion dollars, but still, no small feat.
Hmm.
His whole thing was, whatever happens, I just want my family to have this you know, for until the end of time. It was his most prized possession. But he was kind of an unsophisticated guy, and this is before the advent of AI and the internet.
Hmm.
So they had the balance sheet to be able to pay for the liquidity taxes because he didn't do enough estate planning, but they didn't have liquidity available, so they ended up being forced sellers. It's like the one
Wow.
thing that the father wanted was to hand this down generation to generation. So it happens more often than you think. We'll have to put that in the show notes because it's a more powerful example if I remember the team name and the details.
Yeah.
Um, but stress testing, this is an important one where you want to say like, let's say I've done almost everything. Like I've really put a lot of thought and time and effort into this. What could happen that's totally out of left field, like a COVID type of event, or
Yeah. A
what
strike or
exactly?
something
Like
unforeseen. Yeah.
what? Let's say I options 1 through 10 or A to Z come up blank for some reason that's out of my control. What is another way to make sure there's something available?
Hmm.
I guess it's sort of like a modified version of an emergency fund or something to that effect, where you're going to figure out your short, medium, long-term goals. You're modeling for the bullish examples or the bearish examples, but then also make sure you do scenario modeling to figure out like regardless of anything, a tsunami, an earthquake, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that there's some stash of cash available, and then
Yeah.
the AI can tell you, have you thought about this?
Well, one of your prompts was how do I avoid being asset rich and cash poor? Right? It's like a
Exactly.
classic, and that was your goes back to your scenario. Um, so just understanding that there is a thing as being asset rich and cash poor, and and one of your other prompts was something along the lines of how do my liquidity needs change as I age?
That's a great one. A really good one, which they'll give you milestones and they'll pull from real data to say this what happens to most people. That data exists. Then
Hmm.
you can say, I'm not like most people. Here's what's different about me. What things could happen to me that don't happen to other people? And then you're just going to get this wave of information that will help you to plan and prepare. And then you just kind of keep it in the back of your mind and make sure that you don't get into that spot. I would also say the idea of the balance sheet versus the cash flow, that's
Hmm.
easy to prompt too.
Hmm.
Like I'm cash flow, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, but I have like 10 times more wealth than the average person. What's going on?
Yeah.
What might I be missing? And they'll tell you what you could be missing, and then you can say, how do I turn that amount of money into cash flow? And then you can maneuver from there.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, so that takes us to number 9. We've got two more here.
Mhm.
Lending against assets.
Yes. So a big trade-off of putting a ton of money into, say, like an irrevocable trust or an irrevocable life insurance trust, it's commonly thought of as an estate planning trick because if I get above about 13.5 million, which they'll probably increase this number, incrementally over time, um, you will be taxed unless you design your estate within the tax strategy or the tax laws that are prevailing at that time. So people think like, okay, I only need an irrevocable trust or an irrevocable life insurance trust to make sure that there's 20 million bucks available the day after I die, untaxed, passes or avoids probate. But what we can actually do is you can put a bunch of like Jensen Huang is a good example. It's like 10 or 15 years ago, he put I don't know how many million shares of Nvidia into an irrevocable trust. Now that stock has appreciated dramatically, would be fair to say,
Fair to
that's
say.
going to go to his beneficiaries untaxed. The
Brilliant.
estate people, tax people can't touch it. And then Jensen, during his lifetime, can borrow against it, which is like receiving a fat check
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't get taxed. So you acquire assets, you borrow against them tax free, you pay them off, or you don't even have to. It's just then deducted from your estate when the checks are mailed to the beneficiaries. So the colloquial term is buy or acquire or buy whatever,
Mm-hmm.
accumulate, and then borrow and then die, which sounds a bit morbid, but
Yeah.
if you can borrow against something for 0% tax versus 30 or 40% effective rates, this is, massive amount of difference versus
Yeah.
doing it one way or the other.
Yeah. That's the voodoo right there.
Hmm.
That there's just those prompts and kind of staying in that prompt for a while is it could pay its dividends for many years to come. I like that one. Okay, so we're at our final prompt here, our final major cornerstone of our family office in our condensed window. It's balance sheet integration and master planning. This is the signature category. Tell us about this one.
Okay, so we've done a good job, I think, of talking about this process as we go along. But let's say you're not us, and this is a little bit newer to you, and you just want to do one thing at a time. So you do step one, and then step two, and then step three, and you're sort of playing around specifically in those categories. The last thing you want to do is pick and choose from everything that you've done so far, and then make sure that it matches up. Like, tell it to synthesize everything we've done together and all of my favorite options and the best way to do these things, and make sure that we're maximizing all of our benefits. We're
Mm-hmm.
calling this the concept of a master plan. You're still going to then get with a wealth advisor or an accountant or a tax strategist or a lawyer, but this you want to get this as close to being like the last 10 or 20% of the work as opposed to starting from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our idea of the master plan to make sure that everything is very coherent. And what I mean by that is I don't want to pick my favorite option for an asset sale of an S corp when my tax strategy was like, oh, that sounds really good, but that was actually a stock sale of a C corp. So you just want to make sure that you're like kind of cross-referencing all the info and make sure it tracks.
That's great. That's brilliant because that really puts a bow on the whole thing, which
Hmm.
is just stopping at any one of those elements and then you're done with this kind of is the checks and balances. So I think that's great. I know you are helping your clients and anyone out there if you're building out your family office or you need to do some estate wealth management, what have you. Uh, I know right now that you're supporting people in building out these types of plans using these types of tools. Tell us a little bit about that and how does someone get in contact with you and just what does the process look like?
Well, I'm easier to reach than ever because I have much less admin and busy work. Very on brand for the conversation that we're having. I think we're going to say that you can, basically do $25,000 worth of work and have a pretty coherent template or concept of your family office within 30 minutes on AI. I think that is very compelling and it's true. We're not just, playing a joke on the audience to try and score some algorithm points. But the reality is people are going to see it and feel like this is great, but I'd still rather do this with some oversight.
Hmm.
Of course, we can do it together, or it can even do you one better. You don't want to use the AI, you don't want to play with it, you don't want to have the headache. Because this is another one I hear is this sounds great, but I don't have time, it's not a priority. I don't want to go and into my attic and pull out all these documents and re-reference a trust I wrote in the 90s. You don't even have to. If we have probably a 30-minute conversation where I can just kind of get fairly personal, but just kind of feel things out, I probably have well over half of what we would traditionally have to request in terms of documentation to do all this scenario modeling for you and then come up with, say, like 3 or 5 different ways that I would do this if I were you.
Hmm.
So that's, we're skipping 5 or 10 hours worth of work, plus headache, plus going in the attic to find a piece of paper and, cross-referencing tax returns from 5 or 10 years ago. So if you'll just even have a phone conversation with us for 20, 30 minutes, we'll go do this for you. And then say by the end of the week, we'll turn around and say, here's a plan. Here's 3 or 4 different ways to do it. If you like all of this, let's do it. If you like none of it, we can redo it. If you like even 1 or 2 of these ideas, let's focus there. So giving you guys a couple of different options of how to make this happen. And then of course, email, phone, I'm easy to find.
All right. Well, we'll put your contact down below in the show notes. If you're new to this, please like, comment, subscribe. This one was chock full, so we'll have all the bookmarks in there. Go back, use these prompts, get going, and then when you have something you feel good and confident about, reach out to Geoff Sokol. Have an initial free consultation. There's no harm, there's no foul, and I think you'll walk away with it better from the experience. So, Geoff, thank you always, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Tim.